Welcome back. ATVs are almost as common as cattle on many operations around the country, and they're also a popular pasture improvement tool. Treating pastures doesn't have to be a big job with big equipment treating large tracts, but in order to get the most out of your ATV spray rig, it's important to set it up properly before you head out to spray your pasture. Here in the studio with us today, we have Pat Birch. He's a field scientist with Dow AgriSciences. Pat, last year you brought some backpack sprayers and a little smaller equipment, and this year we've stepped up a bit.
Yeah, we have stepped up a bit, yeah. This is a very common piece of equipment we find on farms and ranches, and the neat thing about it is it becomes a very flexible piece of equipment for using to spray your pastures.
Sure.
This one is set up a little bit different than traditional sprayers. If you think about like a truck-mounted or a tractor-mounted sprayer, oftentimes we have a fixed boom.
Sure.
So there may be 10, 15 feet on either side, a boom sticking out. There's a problem with that, and especially when we're spraying rough pastures. You can be snagging it on things, brush, rocks.
Fences.
Sometimes if you get a little tilted, it can dig into the ground. So those are just some problems of dealing with a fixed boom type application. Now you can put a fixed boom on this for certain situations that you want to spray with. But this one right now is rigged with a boomless setup.
Oh.
And the boomless setup gives you a lot more flexibility for spraying different canopy heights, you know, kind of on rough terrain where you get tilted a bit. This one is set up, as I said, with a boomless setup. It has two spray nozzles back here.
What's the width of those then?
These will each spray about 15 feet.
Oh.
So 15 feet left, 15 feet right. And then the beauty of that is you have your controls here. You can shut off one side. So if you needed to spray down a fence row, for instance, you could make that application just on one side of the rig.
That sounds
and so that makes it given another little bit of flexibility for it. All your controls here are operated on the left-hand side because the operator is going to use the throttle for the right hand.
Sure.
Pressure gauges are here. The other thing that we have with it is a handgun.
Sure.
Yeah, for spot spraying. So oftentimes you may come across brush that's taller, and you have the flexibility of using something like this to spray that.
Now, I've noticed a saddle tank type system. I've not seen this before. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the whole idea of this is to get the weight down, forward and down. You want to get some of it ahead of the head of the axle, gives it a little bit more stability, but lowering that center of gravity, because when you load these things up with a lot of water, it's a lot of weight, and these rigs can become unstable. On the front of this is a yellow tank, as you can see, and that's more the traditional tank. And those tanks can really cause a lot of weight to come up high.
Is that just extra product? You have these two tanks then hooked together, or what's the situation?
Well, actually, this particular applicator, local applicator that's brought this in for us, uses that as a separate spray mix. So if they're out there and they're running across two different problems that they use different herbicide mixes for, they can have that set up.
Very good.
The beauty of these types of things, it fits all of our product line, and so we can use it in a lot of different ways. A lot of diverse uses for the products, and this rig will give you a lot of those uses.
Now, I noticed the fire extinguisher on here. Is there any other safety concerns a person ought to be concerned about when using a rig like this?
Well, the safety concerns are stability. That's the main thing. The fire extinguisher is on there just in case you're out there in the summer, it's very dry, and you start a fire, you want to be able to put it out. But stability of the system, a baffle in the tank, something to keep that water from sloshing around. It gives it a lot more stability, is very helpful. But that's the main thing. This type of a piece of equipment, you're kind of locked in there, so if it does roll over, the applicator is exposed.
Well, and speaking of stability, you brought a little bigger rig with you, didn't you?
I didn't bring it with me. This is on my wish list.
I'm with you.
Basically, you're taking everything that you've got here and you're stepping it up in size. You're bringing over the same kind of equipment. You're bringing it here to a rig where you can hold more water, and you gain greater stability with this type of equipment.
Tell us about this tank here.
Yeah, this tank is a 60-gallon tank. Here we're talking about 15-gallon, 25-gallon tanks. Here we've got a 60-gallon tank. It is a rectangular tank, but it is set up with a cone bottom so that it drains more readily. Now, this also has heavy-duty suspension. And that's very important when you start looking at the type of rig you want to put this on. That heavy-duty suspension gives it that stability. You load that up with 60 gallons of water. That's a lot of weight. And this rig will handle it, and it'll remain relatively level so that you don't have to worry about tipping and tilting back. You can imagine trying to drive with your wheels kind of
Still
bouncing
the
in the air.
boomless system on this rig, right?
Yes.
But you also have a couple of booms up front. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
The system we have here has a fixed boom, kind of a traditional fixed boom.
Sure.
It's not a very large one, and it'll flip down.
Yeah.
And so then if you bring that down, you're going to use that for a much narrower path.
Very good.
You know, you have maybe a 6-foot swath here with this fixed boom that's much lower to the ground, something like roadside spraying. But that back there can spray 15 feet or 15 feet both ways and make it 30 feet.
Really,
so it's
really versatile. And then from a safety standpoint, again, your comment about this rig having not only wider suspension, but also the roll bar.
The roll bar is a nice feature of this. You know, the applicator or the operator is buckled in, and they're buckled in inside that roll cage, and so that makes it a very stable piece of equipment, much safer to operate. And so this is going on my wish list.
Well, and mine too. Well, thank you so much for coming. It just demonstrates that you don't have to have big equipment and big tractors. You don't have to choose between that and just hand spraying. There are some options that are very, very convenient in terms of getting out in some of that rougher country and still getting that weeds control. Thanks for coming. For more information on using your ATV as a spray rig or the Dow AgriSciences line of range and pasture herbicides, just visit rangeandpasture.com or cattlemantocattleman.org.